Conquering heart disease and stroke is today's topic. Meet someone who works hard daily to get the word out. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Fox 43 studio. We're again focused on the American Heart Association. We're visiting with the chair-elect of the Mid-Atlantic Affiliate Board of Directors, Camilla Hertwig. Good morning, Camilla.
Good morning. How are you?
Thanks so much for coming in. It's so exciting to get a celebrity here in the studio.
I don't know about celebrity status, but I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely. Well, you know, that aspect of now chair-elect of a board that serves a 5-state area is a pretty big deal.
Well, it's exciting, and it's because of the way that we're structured now. Several years ago, the American Heart Association decided to restructure because each state had its own division and communities had their own boards. And then we developed a new structure nationwide, which allowed us to have 12 affiliates. And each affiliate has a certain population area in it. And in South Carolina, we had the opportunity, at that time I was on the state board, to determine if we wanted to go with the Mid-Atlantic affiliate or if we wanted to go with a southern affiliate, which was basically our neighbors in Alabama and Tennessee and Florida. And we chose the Mid-Atlantic, South Carolina did. And the reason that we did that was they have such wonderful research centers in the states that we're representing. We're in the Mid-Atlantic's in Virginia, it's in Maryland, it's in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Washington, D.C. And we felt for the research in South Carolina at MUSC and our other state institutions that we had a better opportunity to garner more research dollars and to associate and partner with other research centers.
Of course, that doesn't take anything away from some of the great institutions in those other states. But as you say, being associated with North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and of course our nation's capital is a pretty big deal.
Exactly, and we enjoyed it so much. It really brought a focus to South Carolina that we didn't have the opportunity to have before.
Now, how is this board structured? Do you have representatives from all these states and from the District of Columbia, or is it primarily? You're here from South Carolina. I think you mentioned that the current chair or the chair after you is also a South Carolinian?
Yes, in our board structure, we have a president, which is a medical person who deals with cardiac disease in a variety of ways. It can be in research, they can be a cardiologist. We also have a layperson, as they call us, who is the chairperson for each board. And so each board has representation from all of the states and from different sectors. And so right now we have a chairman from Maryland, and we have our president is from the D.C. area. And so next year, when I become chairman, Dan Lackland, who is at MUSC, will be the president. So South Carolina will have both positions in the next 2 years.
That's spectacular for the Palmetto State. That's wonderful. Camilla, real quick about yourself. Are you originally from the area?
I'm originally from South Carolina. I'm from Greenville, and I currently live in Greenville, South Carolina. As an adult, I was gone from South Carolina for about 15 years and lived in the Southeast, and then we came back to Greenville and finished raising our children there. Been there for 22 years now.
Wow. Now, what brought you back?
My husband's business. My husband's in the textile business, and I could talk hours about the textile business in South Carolina. But we came back for his business, and we decided at that point he could travel and we would stay put because we'd moved several times in the textile industry. And so it allowed our children to grow up without moving, and it was wonderful for all of us.
Oh yeah, that must have been. You know, so much recently, and just to segue for a second about the textile industry, because it's been in the forefront. You know, this past Tuesday, of course, was the runoff with two candidates for U.S. Senate, and we've been hearing a lot, one from the upstate, one from the PD, hearing a lot about the textile industry. You know, even during this entire U.S. Senate race, along with all the other races. It's been fascinating to hear a little bit about the impact the textile industry's had not only on the state of South Carolina, but America for years. How's that impact feeling now for viewers in the PD in southeastern North Carolina here on the Strand that may not feel it or get a feel of it on a regular basis?
It may not affect you on the coastline quite as much, but if you look at the PD region, South Carolina is a state with much manufacturing in it. Our economy primarily has a couple of segments, and tourism is one, which really works the coastal area. And then manufacturing has been the very large employer business sector in South Carolina, and many of the manufacturing plants were textile plants in our state. And even though textiles have been affected by trade agreements and moving offshore, most manufacturing has been affected in that way. So it's a trend. It's a national trend. It's a trend that we don't necessarily like, and all we want is a level playing field in terms of trade agreements and looking at what we do best. There's still a lot of manufacturing in our state, and it will continue to be. I think it'll be strong. Whether the textile industry ever comes back or not, that's another question, because you can do it so cheaply offshore. But I think many textile companies are finding their niche in the market and are being able to survive with the niche that they found.
Vital.
Yeah.
Camilla, obviously you didn't start your involvement with the Heart Association's chair-elect of a 5-state board. Instead, you probably started, I assume, as an early volunteer on a small level. What was your first involvement with the Heart Association? What prompted that interest?
Well, I was in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was about 1981-82, and the American Heart Association had really not had a tremendous presence in the Greenville area for quite a while. And so a good friend of mine, Max Heller, who was a former mayor of Greenville, he said that he really wanted to help revive that. So Max called together many of his friends and brought us all into a meeting and said, I'm going to get involved. I want you to get involved as well. One of the reasons he called me was because he knew that there was so much heart disease in my family. On my husband's side of the family, no male had lived beyond 57 for a couple of generations.
Wow.
And I was married to one of those males at this point, and my father-in-law died at 57. And I surely wanted my husband to live longer than that. And I was a mother of 3 sons.
Wow.
And so I really wanted to get involved, not only because it was a good thing to do for my community, but personally, I was involved. My parents, one side, well, really both sides of my family have heart disease. So self-preservation is part of that. You really do want to get involved in things that make a difference.
And you feel you can make a difference, Camilla?
You can. There is so wonderful to have the opportunity to make a difference at the local level, at the state level, and even at the national level. And there are ways to do that the average citizen can get involved, whether it's participating in the walk or participating in a gala event or another event. Those are great opportunities to funnel money into the American Heart Association. And over 25% of our dollars go for research.
Is that right?
Yes. And I will tell you, last year, we spent $140 million on research.
Is that right?
And it's exciting to see that the research is saving lives. It's saving my friends' lives. It's saving your friends' lives. The research is very valuable. We also, at a local level, the information and the awareness that the American Heart Association brings to issues with stroke and heart disease, as well as obesity, are powerful messages, and we want our citizens to be healthier, and we think we do this very well through our entities of campaigns as well as advocacy level.
You know, I had a guest earlier in the week, promoting a big event this Saturday, the Black Family Expo 2004. This was on Wednesday. We were talking about medical needs within the PD. This is an event at the Florence Civic Center. Of course, we highlighted back to a cardiologist in Florence at McLeod who had talked about the South being the stroke belt of America, and of course the PD really being that belt buckle. And so there's some true needs, not only in the upstate, but of course that ability to try to get involved and to reduce those instances of either heart disease or stroke.
Really all South Carolinians should be very concerned about cardiovascular disease and stroke. As you mentioned, this is the belt. But if you were born on the coast of South Carolina, your risk is higher than if you were born in another part of the state. And it's that way in North Carolina and Georgia as well.
And why would that be, Camilla?
And they're not sure. They're researching it. Dan Lackland, who I mentioned prior to, will be the president of the Mid-Atlantic affiliate, has done a lot of the research, looking at that statistical data, talking about issues that if you were born in South Carolina, your heart is older at 40 than someone born in Minnesota. And why is that? Is it diet? Is it environment? Our lifestyles? And so we're collecting a lot of data that'll help us in South Carolina reduce our death and disability rates with cardiovascular and stroke.
That's vital, Camilla. That's vital. Let's think about, of course, returning back to the Palmetto State, obviously returning to the upstate after 15 years in other parts of the Southeast, and of course getting back, I assume at some level, have you been involved in your husband's business, the family business?
I've been involved with his business to a degree, and he still has a textile business, and it's more a medical product at this point. And I've also had a variety of jobs and careers myself.
Right.
Through the years.
And you also said you all raised 3 boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have 3 grown sons. I have 3 grandchildren who are marvelous.
Yeah.
1 grandson, 3, and 2 little granddaughters that were born within the same week last year, and we're getting ready to celebrate their birthdays. And I have 1 son in North Carolina, and my other 2 sons are in Greenville. So it's just delightful to have them so close. Close
at hand in either Carolina. Of course, having raised 3 boys, what's it like now having 2 granddaughters?
It's marvelous. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
It's wonderful because through the years, I always said I had 4 children, my husband, my 3 sons, and they outnumbered me greatly.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just delightful to have that soft touch around, even though they're very young. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, Camilla, my parents have 3 boys, so I know my mother was in the exact same scenario, absolutely. I think I saw in reading a little bit about you, Camilla, that you'd gotten involved in an education foundation, helped develop an education foundation in the upstate. Can you share with the viewers a little about that? I know recently we had a guest on Trip Dubard, and last year Don Harriet focused on the school foundation, which is a private foundation to benefit Public District 1 there in Florence. Can you share with the viewers a little about how an education foundation gets set up and why those needs are put in place?
Well, it's a powerful tool in any community. Actually, back in the 80s, again, I was with the Greenville County School District, and I was director of all of their public involvement. And the Ford Foundation, back at that time, were really looking at new ways to get people more involved with public education and to be able to exert some change in public education. And so they had a pilot project going, and so that one of those projects was to see how many public-private, so to speak, foundations could be started that would benefit public education. Mm-hmm. And so Greenville, South Carolina was one of the original entities in this project. And so one of the things that we began to do was to look at community leaders who had an interest in higher educational goals and changes, to be able to look at the education arena without being part of the system itself or an elected official who served on the school board. And we felt like we could bring much to bear in terms of resources and change for the public education system. So we started the Alliance for Quality Education, and our programs were primarily grants programs to give teachers an opportunity to do something new and unique that the school system had no money for. Mm-hmm. We also served as a public awareness arm, as well as always trying to recruit good candidates for school boards. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that if you're within the system. Those are things that you need to have your community involved in. So we set a model for South Carolina, and after we started that and raised the necessary funds to do that, which they continue to do in Greenville, we looked at helping other communities start foundations themselves. In fact, the PD Foundation, many years ago when it was started, I came down to share with them the process of how you develop that and what did you want your goals to be. And so there are many across the state now.
There's that's right, the one, and now a different one there in Florence, and of course Charleston, I believe, has a couple, and of course I'm sure the Midlands must have,
they do.
I'm sure they must.
In the Midlands, they had a school foundation was started, and so they had a little different scenario. They had to broaden from that rather than being focused on one school, but to be focused on a school district or an entire region like the PD.
So when this former mayor of Greenville got you all in a room together and said, I'm going to get involved with the American Heart Association, we're going to revitalize this board, not to segue back off of the Education Foundation, but that's so exciting to think about one person stepping out and bringing his friends together, in this instance, his friends together. What was it like for y'all at that point? Obviously, you knew you needed to get involved because of the family issue, and also there was the right thing, but getting involved and saying, we're going to make this happen, that's obviously laid the groundwork for a lot more.
It did, and it was exciting because we brought together a group of community leaders to form a board, and we developed our program, and it was exciting to see that progress in our community. And we were the Greenville Division, and we had never had a heart ball or a heart walk at that time. And so we had the heart walk and the heart ball were instigated under those first few years.
And do you mind me asking what year this was, Camilla? Do you remember?
It was around 1982.
Okay, so a little more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have been really blessed there to continue to expand the ball and the walk and the public awareness program.
Before taking on this position as chair-elect of the 5-state area, or the 4 states plus the District of Columbia, you've been in this role with the South Carolina American Heart Association, I believe, as the chair of advocacy or advocacy chair. What has that entailed, Camilla, and how has that taken you around the state?
Well, it's exciting again because before the new structure of the American Heart Association, we had a state board, which I had served as president of our division, local board, and then I was on the state board. And then we developed our Mid-Atlantic board, and each state has a chair of public advocacy. And advocacy is so important that we have good public policy for the health of our citizens. It's important that we look at issues that have an impact on South Carolina. And that's what we do. As the advocacy chair, we really focus on good legislation. And I would like to really thank our House and Senate this year for passing the legislation for safe routes to school for kids. And basically, this piece of legislation really looks at what are the barriers for children being able to walk to school, to ride their bicycles to school, because, you know, we have an obesity problem with our youth. And in South Carolina, 1 in every 5 people are obese in our state.
Children? Or
children
across the
and
board?
adults.
Is that right?
Yes. And so it's a tremendous problem. We also wanted them to look at a couple of other pieces of legislation, and 2 of the pieces the Senate passed, but we've got to take them back next year because the House didn't get around to these. And one really has to do with physical education in schools, restoring 150 minutes of PE to our elementary school children. And another piece of legislation really dealt with looking at smoking prevention for teens and possibly having your license suspended for 30 days or a delay of 30 days to get your license if you were not already a licensed driver. The other form of legislation that we've worked very hard on is a tobacco tax. We know that tobacco usage causes a great deal of heart disease, lung disease, stroke, and that it's the most preventable cause of death in the U.S. and in South Carolina. And we have so many citizens in South Carolina still smoking. And so we would love to have a cigarette tax. You know, and it's a long haul in our state. But we've worked together with the tobacco growers, and we've built partnerships with many organizations to look at that issue. For instance, you know, ours in South Carolina is very low. In New York, they have the highest tax on a pack of cigarettes, $1.50, and their cigarettes are about $7 a pack. But consumption has gone down and revenues for the state have gone up. So we feel like, and we know from the research, that if we raise the cost of a pack of cigarettes, fewer teens smoke. And we have one of the highest rates in the country of teen smoking.
Now, Camilla, you said you've been able to work, of course, you know, again, our viewers in the PD in southeastern North Carolina, where there are obviously quite a few tobacco growers. You said you've been working with tobacco growers, and albeit I understand there's probably some friction. Have you all been able to minimize that friction?
Yes.
Right.
The tobacco growers have, they understand the issue, and we have worked with them to help them craft public policy, work on issues that affect them. And so we're working together, helping one another.
We'll have to get you in contact. One of our guests last Thursday, Representative Jim Battle from, you may know, from Mullins, who obviously was talking about, we spent about 15 minutes talking about tobacco last week when we were taping in Marion. It was very exciting having a better understanding, but as you say, I think the understanding is there that public policy, there's some changes that are affront and need to be continued.
You know, there's another area in advocacy that we work on, and it's on a national level, but also it comes home to South Carolina. The CDC, Center for Disease Control, we have a grant in South Carolina, and one of the designated areas for the grantees of the grants program will be the PD, Marion, Dillon, that area. And basically it is looking at get with the guidelines, and I know you're familiar with that program, but it's really looking at protocol in hospitals and hospital emergency rooms, so when you arrive, you receive the proper kind of care to diagnose whether you're having a stroke or whatever. And so you'll be seeing that working through some of the hospitals in the PD.
Great, good. Golly, it must be thrilling for you, Camilla, to be on the pulse of much of what's either coming into the state or happening within the state through this position with advocacy.
It really is rewarding personally, as well as I know that we're doing some great things for the citizens of South Carolina. We want healthy people in our state. We want them to be vibrant and have a wonderful quality of life, and these health issues that can be prevented, we want to see what we can do about that.
Earlier in the week, we were visiting with Tammy Eves, the Senior Area Director for the Waccamaw Division, Horry and Georgetown County. We talked about Go Red for Women. I think you may have mentioned that a little earlier. Of course, you're wearing a beautiful red dress, and you've got that red dress pin up there. It's amazing to think about the impact of reaching out to women as well, and letting them know about the impact of heart disease and stroke within their lives if they're not fully aware of it. What are some of the words that have been used most, or what's touched home the most about the Go Red for Women campaign that launched last year?
It has been fabulously successful, really beyond our dreams. It's a multi-year campaign, and it is a public awareness campaign. And one of the things that's so exciting about it, particularly for women in South Carolina, is we want them to take charge of their health. And many women are caretakers. That's kind of our motto. We take care of everybody else, and we put ourselves last. And so through the public awareness and the issues and the programs that we bring to bear, we want women in South Carolina to be healthier and to avoid having those incidences of stroke and heart disease that are preventable. And you know, about a third of it is. And so it's exciting that we can tell them that. We kicked off our Go Red for Women campaign statewide in Columbia, and the fountains turned red that day and all the squares. And we really had a wonderful turnout of about 300 women turned out to help us launch it in South Carolina. And so we're excited. We know that we are doing some great things with that awareness.
That aspect, obviously, of the husband side of the family, no man living beyond 57, recognizing that within a number of generations, seeing that inspiration to help you get more involved and to really step out. Camilla, has that been the biggest inspiration for you?
It's been wonderful. And my husband is past 57, and he's still alive and well, and that is wonderful. And I want, my young sons to live long, fruitful, healthy lives. And it's so wonderful because heart disease that kills someone because they didn't have the research 20 years ago, that person won't die today because of the procedures and the information that's out there and the protocol. So it's very rewarding to see the progress that's been made and that we're going to continue to make, because they tell us in the future that some of the techniques that we're using today will be obsolete. And I think that's exciting.
Definitely. Camilla, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Camilla Hertwig coming up next. You heard her use that word caretaker, whether that caretaker is used for your mom or your aunt or your grandmother, your daughter. It's been prominently used as they relate to women for virtually any volunteer who gets active with the American Heart Association. They take on that word. For all charities, you've got to become a caretaker. You've got to get out there and get involved and really make an effort to make a difference in your community. You heard Camilla talking about an inspiration, her husband's side of the family, and so many others who came to her to talk to her about getting involved with the American Heart Association, raising 3 boys and now having 2 granddaughters in the fold. Caretaking will be there for a long time.